I still remember the weight of those Christmas presents in my arms. 3 shopping bags filled with carefully chosen gifts, wrapped in red and gold paper. I had spent weeks selecting each one, imagining my son's smile, my grandchildren's laughter. The cold December wind bit at my face as I climbed the steps to the house I had built with my own hands, with decades of sacrifice. The house where I raised him alone after his father left us when he was only 3 years old. The house I had mortgaged to pay for his college, his wedding, his dreams. I rang the doorbell with my elbow, struggling to balance the bags. My heart was racing with anticipation. It had been 6 months since I had last seen them. 6 months of excuses, postponed visits, unanswered calls. The door opened. My son stood there, tall and well-dressed in an expensive sweater I had never seen before. Behind him, I could see the glow of the Christmas tree, hear the murmur of voices, smell the turkey roasting in the oven. "Mom?" His voice was cold, surprised, not happy. Surprised. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." I tried to sound cheerful, even though something in his expression was already breaking my heart. I know I should have called, but I wanted to surprise you all. I brought presents for everyone, and I made your favorite cookies, the ones with, "Mom, we're not expecting you for Christmas." 6 words. Just 6 words that shattered 35 years of motherhood into 1,000 pieces. I stood there, frozen on the porch, while the snow began to fall around me. Behind him, I could see his wife, Jennifer, watching from the hallway with an expression I couldn't quite read. My grandchildren were nowhere to be seen, though I could hear their voices from somewhere inside. I don't understand," I whispered. "It's Christmas Eve. We always spend Christmas together. Always." "We made other plans this year, Mom. Jennifer's family is here. We don't have room for—" He stopped himself, but I heard what he didn't say. They didn't have room for me. In the house I had helped them buy, in the family I had built. My hands were shaking now, not from the cold. "But I drove 3 hours. I thought you should have called first." His voice was firm, final, dismissive, as if I were a door-to-door salesman, not his mother. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him if he remembered all those nights I worked double shifts so he could have new shoes, piano lessons, summer camp. If he remembered how I held him when he cried over his first broken heart, how I believed in him when no one else did. Instead, I carefully placed the bags on the porch. My vision was blurred with tears I refused to let fall in front of him. "Keep the presents," I said quietly. "Merry Christmas." I turned and walked away. Each step felt like I was walking through broken glass. Behind me, I heard the door close, not slammed, just closed, gently, as if I had never been there at all. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could see well enough to drive. The steering wheel was wet with my tears. My phone buzzed with a text message from my son. "Sorry for the confusion, Mom. Maybe we can meet for coffee in January." Coffee, in January, after I'd given him everything. That night, in my small apartment 3 hours away, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. The next morning, I logged into my bank account and canceled the mortgage payment on their house. The house I had been paying for. The house they didn't know was still in my name because I had co-signed when they couldn't qualify for the loan. That was just the beginning. Before you continue, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. Your support means everything to this community we're building together. Because what I'm about to tell you next will change everything you think you know about family, justice, and revenge. What I discovered in the weeks that followed wasn't just about a mortgage. It was about a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that it would send my own son to prison for 23 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all truly began. I wasn't always this alone. There was a time when my son called me every Sunday, when my grandchildren drew pictures for Grandma and stuck them on my refrigerator, when Jennifer smiled at me without that cold edge in her eyes. The change was gradual, like cancer. You don't notice it until it's metastasized. It started 2 years before that Christmas Eve. My son David had been promoted to senior accountant at a prestigious firm. Good money, corner office, company car. He was proud, and I was proud of him. I had raised him to be ambitious, to reach for more than the poverty we had known. Jennifer had quit her teaching job to focus on the children, though the children spent most of their time in expensive private schools and with nannies. She had taken up shopping as a hobby, posting photos on social media of designer handbags and luxury vacations. I should have seen the signs. The first red flag was when David asked me to co-sign for the house. They needed a bigger place, he said. The apartment was too small for a growing family. The problem was they had too much debt. Credit cards maxed out, a car loan they couldn't quite manage. The bank wouldn't approve them a loan. Just a formality, Mom, he assured me. We make more than enough to cover the payments. We just need your credit score to get us over the finish line. I signed. Of course I signed. He was my son. I trusted him with my life. What I didn't know was that I wasn't just co-signing. The paperwork was more complex than I understood, and I had been too proud to admit I couldn't follow all the legal language. I thought I was helping him get a loan. I didn't realize that technically the house was in my name, with him as a co-owner, a detail that would become crucial later. The second red flag was the growing distance. Cancelled plans, short phone calls, excuses, always excuses. Mom, I'm swamped at work. Mom, the kids have activities every weekend. Mom, Jennifer isn't feeling well. I told myself it was normal. People get busy. Life happens. But deep down, in that place where mothers know things, I felt it. I was being erased from their lives, one excuse at a time. The third red flag was the money. 6 months before that Christmas Eve, David called me. It was rare enough that I nearly cried with relief when I saw his name on my phone. Mom, I need your help. Those words. The same words he had used when he was 10 and broke Mrs. Patterson's window with a baseball, the same words he used when he was 17 and wrecked my car. The same words that always preceded me fixing his problems. Anything, sweetheart, what do you need? It's the house payment. The firm is restructuring, and my bonus didn't come through like I expected. We're a little short this month. Could you cover the mortgage? Just this once. I'll pay you back with interest. Just this once. I had $32,000 in my savings account. Money I had set aside for retirement, for emergencies. For the future I had imagined where maybe I could travel a little, rest a little, enjoy the fruits of 40 years of hard work. I transferred $5,000 to his account that day. He called again the next month, and the month after that, and the month after that. By November, I had transferred $18,000. More than half my life savings, my retirement security, vanishing into their mortgage, their lifestyle, their expensive private school tuition. I promise, Mom, things will turn around soon. The firm is just going through a rough patch. You know how it is. I knew how it was. I knew about rough patches. I had lived through rough patches while raising him alone, working 2 jobs, eating ramen so he could have fresh vegetables. I knew about sacrifice. What I didn't know was that there was no rough patch at the firm. David's salary had actually increased. His bonuses were substantial. The money I was sending them wasn't keeping them afloat. It was funding Jennifer's shopping addiction and their extravagant lifestyle. I didn't discover this until later, much later. That Christmas Eve, standing on their porch in the snow, I was still the faithful mother, the giver, the supporter, the one who could be counted on to sacrifice everything and ask for nothing in return. They had mistaken my love for weakness. They had mistaken my generosity for stupidity. They were about to learn the difference, but first, I had to learn the truth. And the truth was far worse than I could have imagined. The week after Christmas was the longest of my life. I sat in my apartment staring at my bank statements, my mortgage documents, my phone that never rang. I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only a shell. But inside that shell, something else was growing, something cold and sharp. I started asking questions. The first call I made was to the bank that held the mortgage on David's house. My house, technically. I told them I needed to review the account details. The woman on the phone was polite but confused. "Mrs. Sullivan, you're listed as the primary owner of the property. Your son is a co-owner. Were you not aware of this arrangement?" Primary owner? I had thought I was just helping him qualify. I didn't know I was the actual owner. "Can you tell me the payment history?" My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. "Of course. Let me pull that up." A pause. "It looks like payments have been inconsistent for the past 8 months. Several late payments, a few missed entirely. The account is currently 2 months behind." 2 months behind. But I had been sending them money every single month. Where had it gone? "And who has been making the payments that did go through?" Another pause. "The payments have come from various sources, some from your son's account, some from what appears to be a business account, and several from your personal account." A business account. David worked for an accounting firm. He didn't have a business. Unless he did. The second call I made was to my son. He didn't answer. I left a message, keeping my voice calm, asking him to call me back about the house payments. He texted me 3 hours later. "Mom, things are crazy right now. I'll call you next week." Next week. Always next week. Next month. Next year. Always tomorrow. Never today. I didn't wait for next week. Instead, I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus, a retired police detective who came recommended by a woman I worked with. He cost $200 an hour, money I could barely afford, after giving so much to David. But I needed to know. "Mrs. Sullivan," Marcus said when we met in his small office, "I need you to be prepared for whatever I find. Sometimes the truth is worse than we imagine." "I'm prepared," I told him. I wasn't. 3 weeks later, Marcos called me back to his office. He had a manila folder thick with documents, photographs, bank statements. "Your son has been running a real estate investment scheme," Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. "He's been using your name, your credit, your financial history to secure loans on multiple properties, not just the house you know about. 4 other properties across the state." I couldn't breathe. 4? 4. He's been flipping houses, or at least that's what he told investors. He convinced several people to invest money with him, promising high returns. "Your name is on all the paperwork, Mrs. Sullivan. Legally, you're the one who took out these loans." The room was spinning. How much? In total, just over $800,000. $800,000 in debt, in my name, at 63 years old, with no way to pay it back, no assets beyond my small apartment and my dying savings account. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "The money your son was getting from investors, he wasn't using it to flip houses. Most of it was going to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. He's been laundering money, Mrs. Sullivan, and Jennifer is in on it too. Her name is on several of the offshore accounts." I sat there in silence for a long time. Marcus waited patiently, letting me process what he had told me. My son, the boy I had raised to be honest, to be good, to be kind, the man I had sacrificed everything for. He had used me, stolen from me, destroyed my financial future, and worse than that, he had involved me in fraud. If the authorities found out, I could go to prison. "What do I do?" I finally whispered. Marcus leaned forward. "You have 2 options. You can go to the police now, cooperate, and hope they believe you were a victim too. Or you can wait, gather more evidence, and build a case that proves without a doubt that you were defrauded. And if I wait, there's a risk. If the scheme collapses on its own, you might get caught in the blast. But if you're careful, you can position yourself as the victim rather than the accomplice. I thought about that Christmas Eve. The cold door, the dismissive voice, the bags of presents left on the porch like garbage. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought they could use me and discard me. They were wrong. I want to gather evidence, I said. I want to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. And I want them to know it was me who brought them down. Marcus smiled slightly. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who understood justice. Then let's get to work, he said. That night, I went home and looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She looked older, harder, colder than the woman who had stood on that porch with Christmas presents just weeks before. But she also looked stronger. They thought they had broken me. They thought closing the door on Christmas Eve was the end of the story. They had no idea it was just the beginning. Stay with me. What happens next will show you exactly how far a mother will go when her love turns to justice. And trust me, you won't see it coming. 3 months after Christmas, I received an invitation to David's birthday party. I stared at the elegant card, embossed with gold letters, and laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in months, and it sounded strange in my quiet apartment. They were inviting me, after everything. The party was at their house, of course, a garden party for 50 guests. Catered live music. Semi-formal attire requested. My first instinct was to throw the invitation in the trash, but then I thought about what Marcus had told me just days before. They're getting cocky, he had said, showing me recent bank transfers. They think they've gotten away with it. They're spending more openly now, less careful about covering their tracks. Pride before the fall. I RSVP'd yes. I bought a new dress for the occasion, something I hadn't done in years. Navy blue, simple but elegant. I had my hair done at a salon. I wanted to look good. Not for them, but for me. I wanted to look like a woman who had not been broken. The day of the party was beautiful. Spring had arrived early, and their garden was blooming with flowers I remembered helping David plant when he first bought the house. My flowers, my work, my money. I arrived exactly on time. David greeted guests at the door, shaking hands, laughing, playing the role of successful businessman. When he saw me, his smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Mom, I'm so glad you could make it." He hugged me stiffly. His expensive cologne smelled like lies. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart." Jennifer appeared beside him, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Margaret, how lovely. You look well." The pause before well was deliberate. I smiled back, just as false. "Thank you, Jennifer. You've done such beautiful work with the garden. The roses are particularly stunning." "Oh, those were David's idea. He has such an eye for beauty." My roses, that I had chosen, that I had planted. But I said nothing, not yet. The party was everything I expected. Colleagues from David's firm, Jennifer's society friends, neighbors impressed by their wealth and status. Everyone drinking expensive wine, eating catered food, admiring the house that was built on fraud and stolen money. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, listening. People love to talk at parties, especially when they've had a few drinks. "David's been so successful lately," one woman gushed. "I heard he's starting his own investment firm." "Jennifer told me they're looking at vacation homes in the Hamptons," another said. "Such a lovely couple. So generous, too. They're always donating to charity." Donating to charity, with stolen money, with my money. I found myself in the kitchen filling a glass of water, when I overheard David and Jennifer talking in the adjacent hallway. They didn't know I was there. "Why did you invite her?" Jennifer's voice was sharp, angry. "I had to. It would look weird if my own mother wasn't at my birthday party. People would ask questions." "She's pathetic, David. Did you see her dress? She looks like she's going to a funeral." They laughed, both of them. My son and his wife laughing at me. "Don't worry," David said. "After tonight, we'll phase her out completely. A few more months, and we'll have moved the last of the overseas accounts. We'll buy the house outright from her, settle the debt, and we'll be free. She'll never have to know what we used her name for." "What if she finds out?" "She won't. Mom's not exactly sophisticated. She can barely work her smartphone. Besides, even if she did find out, what's she going to do? She signed everything. Legally, she's just as liable as we are." My hand tightened around the water glass. The cool glass was the only thing keeping me grounded, keeping me from walking into that hallway and confronting them right there. But I didn't, because I had something better planned. Marcus was outside, pretending to be a caterer. He had small cameras set up around the garden, recording everything. Not just for evidence, though that was important, but because I wanted to capture what was about to happen. At exactly 7 o'clock, as David stood up to make a toast, thanking everyone for coming to celebrate his 35th birthday, I stood up too. "Actually, David, before you continue, I'd like to say something." The garden went quiet. David looked at me with confusion and just a hint of fear. "Mom, that's not really—" "I'll be brief," I interrupted, my voice carrying across the garden. "I just wanted to thank you, son, for this beautiful party, and for inviting me despite everything." His face relaxed slightly. He thought I was just being sentimental. "You see, everyone, my son and I have been through so much together. I raised him alone after his father left. I worked 2 jobs to put him through college. I co-signed for this beautiful house so he could have everything he deserved." Murmurs of appreciation from the crowd. "What a devoted mother!" And you know what I realized? Despite all that, despite all the sacrifices, despite all the love, sometimes people forget where they came from. Sometimes success makes them forget the people who helped them get there. The crowd was uncomfortable now. This wasn't the light-hearted toast they expected. "Mom," David started, but I kept going. "Which is why I've decided to give my son one more gift, the gift of responsibility. You see, this house is actually in my name. And the mortgage that I've been paying? Well, I've decided to stop." Dead silence. "In fact, I've decided to foreclose on the property. After all, I think it's time David learned to stand on his own 2 feet. Don't you think?" Jennifer had gone pale. David looked like he'd been punched. "You're joking," he said weakly. "I'm not. The paperwork has already been filed. You have 30 days to vacate." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. People were pulling out their phones. This would be all over social media within an hour. "But this isn't just about the house," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "It's about the other 4 properties you took out in my name. The $800,000 in loans, the offshore accounts, the investor fraud." David's face went from pale to crimson. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're confused." "I'm not confused, David. I'm done being used, and so are the authorities. The FBI will be here Monday morning to ask you some questions about your real estate investment scheme. I'd suggest you get a good lawyer." I set down my glass and walked toward the door. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one tried to stop me. No one said a word. Behind me, I heard Jennifer screaming at David, his voice trying to explain, trying to salvage the situation. But it was too late. I had just destroyed them in front of everyone who mattered to them, their friends, their colleagues, their carefully constructed image of success. But that was just the public humiliation. The real revenge was only beginning. As I drove away, I allowed myself a small smile. They had thought I was defeated when they closed that door on Christmas Eve. They were about to learn that I was just getting started. The day after David's party, I woke up to 73 text messages and 41 missed calls. David, Jennifer, numbers I didn't recognize, threats, pleas, curses, promises. I deleted them all without reading most of them. Marcus called me at 8 in the morning. "Mrs. Sullivan, you've created quite a stir. It's all over local social media. Someone recorded your speech and posted it online." "Good," I said. "Let them see exactly what kind of person David really is." "There's something you need to know. David hired a lawyer yesterday, an expensive one. They're claiming you're having mental health issues, that you're not competent to make financial decisions. They're trying to get a conservatorship over you." I laughed. It was bitter, cold. Of course they are. But here's the good news. I have everything we need. Financial records, emails, text messages between David and Jennifer discussing the offshore accounts. They got sloppy, especially in the last few months. We have them dead to rights. And the FBI. They're very interested. I sent them everything this morning. They want to meet with you tomorrow. The FBI interview took place in a gray government building downtown. 2 agents, a man and a woman, both in their 40s, both with the kind of tired eyes that come from seeing too much human ugliness. Agent Morrison, the woman, spoke first. "Mrs. Sullivan, we've reviewed the documents you provided. This is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases we've seen in years. Your son and daughter-in-law have defrauded over 20 investors of more than $2 million. $2 million. I had known it was bad, but not that bad. The good news is, you're clearly a victim here. The paper trail shows you had no knowledge of the scope of their activities. You were simply a name they used." "What happens now?" I asked. Agent Cooper, the man, leaned forward. "We arrest them. We seize their assets. We build a case. If they're smart, they'll take a plea deal. If not, this goes to trial." "How long?" "Months, maybe years for the full legal process. But the arrests, those happen this week." I thought about that for a moment. My son, in handcuffs, being led away while his neighbors watched, his children seeing their father treated like a criminal. I should have felt guilt, remorse. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. "Do it," I said. The arrests happened on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there, but Marcus sent me photos. He had sources in the local police department who kept him informed. David in his expensive suit, hands cuffed behind his back. Jennifer crying, mascara running down her face. FBI agents carrying boxes of documents out of my house. Their children were at school. At least they were spared that. The news made headlines. Local accountant arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The comments online were vicious. People loved to watch the mighty fall. But I wasn't done yet. Over the next 6 months, I worked with prosecutors. I gave depositions. I provided documents. I became their star witness, the mother who had been betrayed, the victim who fought back. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails where David and Jennifer discussed using my name. Bank records showing the offshore transfers. Testimony from defrauded investors who had trusted David because of his mother's good reputation. They tried everything. David's lawyers claimed I had known all along. They painted me as a co-conspirator who got cold feet and turned on them to save myself. But the prosecutors had my bank statements showing how I had been drained of my savings. They had the timeline, showing I had only discovered the fraud after Christmas. They had Marcus's investigation, proving I had acted in good faith. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in the courtroom every single day, watching my son and his wife squirm under cross-examination. David tried to apologize once, catching me in the hallway during a recess. "Mom, please, Think about the kids. They need their father. You should have thought about that before you stole from me, I said quietly. Before you used me. Before you closed the door on Christmas Eve. He flinched. That was Jennifer's idea. I wanted you there, I swear. Don't lie to me anymore, David. I heard you in the kitchen at your party. You both laughed at me, called me pathetic. His face crumbled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So am I said. Sorry that I wasted 35 years raising a thief. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, identity theft. David was sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. Jennifer got 18. When the judge read the sentences, Jennifer screamed. David just stared straight ahead, his face blank. I felt nothing. No triumph, no sadness, just emptiness. Their children went to live with Jennifer's parents. I thought about reaching out to them, trying to maintain a relationship with my grandchildren, but their other grandparents made it clear I wasn't welcome. To them, I was the one who had destroyed their family. Maybe they were right. The house was foreclosed and sold at auction. The proceeds went to paying back the defrauded investors. They recovered about 40% of their money. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The other properties David had fraudulently obtained were also sold. After all the legal fees, all the settlements, all the debt, I walked away with $312,000, more money than I had started with, but far less than I deserved, far less than had been stolen. I sat alone in my apartment the night after the sentencing, staring at the bank statement showing my new balance. I had won. I had brought them to justice. I had gotten revenge. So why did I feel so hollow? The answer would come later in a way I never expected. But for now, in that moment, all I knew was that victory tasted like ashes. What happened next would change everything. Not just for me, but for hundreds of women who would never know my name. Stay with me, because this is where the real story begins. 6 months after the trial, I sat in a coffee shop and opened a business bank account. The account was for the Dignity Foundation, a nonprofit organization I had spent those 6 months creating. The mission was simple: help single mothers and women recovering from financial abuse rebuild their lives. I had learned so much in my journey through hell. I had learned how easily trust could be weaponized, how the legal system could be confusing and overwhelming, how isolation could make you vulnerable. I didn't want other women to suffer what I had suffered. The $312,000 I had recovered, I put it all into the foundation, every penny. I lived off my Social Security and took a part-time job at a local bookstore to make ends meet. But the foundation, that was my purpose now. We started small. A free legal clinic 1 night a week, staffed by volunteer lawyers. A support group for women dealing with financial abuse. An emergency fund to help with rent, utilities, food when women were trying to escape bad situations. Word spread. Women came. Women who had been controlled by husbands who monitored every dollar. Women whose partners had destroyed their credit. Women who had been used, manipulated, gaslit. I met Sarah, whose ex-husband had taken out credit cards in her name and maxed them out. I met Chen, whose boyfriend had convinced her to co-sign for his business loans before disappearing. I met Rosa, who had worked for 20 years in her husband's restaurant without being paid, then found herself divorced with nothing. Their stories broke my heart. Their strength inspired me. The foundation grew. We got donations. I wrote grants. We partnered with other nonprofits. Within 2 years, we had a small office, 3 part-time staff members, and we were helping over 100 women a year. I threw myself into the work. It was easier than thinking about David rotting in prison, easier than thinking about my grandchildren growing up without me, easier than thinking about what I had lost. But late at night, in my small apartment, the questions came anyway. Had I done the right thing? Could I have handled it differently? Was revenge really justice, or just another form of damage? I thought about calling David. The prison allowed phone calls, but every time I reached for my phone, I remembered that Christmas Eve, the door closing, his cold voice, their laughter in the kitchen, and I put the phone down. 3 years after the trial, I received a letter. Prison mail, institutional envelope, David's handwriting. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. "Dear Mom," it began. My eyes filled with tears at just those 2 words. When was the last time he had called me Mom? "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to write back. I just need you to know that I understand now what I did to you. Not just the money, the betrayal, the disrespect. The way I treated you like you were nothing. I've had a lot of time to think in here. A lot of time to remember all the things you did for me, all the sacrifices you made. I remember you working double shifts on Christmas so I could have presents under the tree. I remember you going without so I could have. I remember your hands rough and calloused from work you hated but you never complained. And I repaid you by using you, by stealing from you, by laughing at you with my wife. I can't undo what I did, but I've been taking classes here, business ethics, believe it or not, accounting too, trying to understand how I justified what I did. I've been leading a group for inmates trying to make amends to their families. Jennifer filed for divorce. The kids won't talk to me. I've lost everything and I deserve it. But I want you to know something. I heard about the Dignity Foundation. One of the guards here, her sister was helped by your organization. She told me about it not knowing I was your son. She said you saved her sister's life. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something beautiful. That's who you always were, Mom. You build things. You fix things. You make things better. I destroyed things. I know I don't have the right to ask, but I hope you're proud of what you've built, and I hope someday, maybe years from now, you might let me know you. Not as my mother, I lost that right, but as someone who admires what you've become. I love you. I know I don't deserve to say it, but it's true. David. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and went back to work. But the letter stayed in my mind, and slowly, very slowly, something shifted. Revenge had felt empty because it was destructive. The foundation felt full because it was creative. I had spent my anger on punishment, but I had found my peace in purpose. 6 months later, I wrote back. Not a long letter, just a short note. I'm not ready to forgive. I may never be. But I'm glad you're trying to be better. That's all any of us can do. We began corresponding, once a month at first, then more frequently. Letters about the foundation, about his classes, about the grandchildren he never saw but thought about every day. 4 years after the trial, I visited him in prison. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, walking into that visiting room, seeing him in prison clothes. He looked older, grayer, thinner. But there was something different in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Humility. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, David." We talked for 2 hours. Not about the past. That wound was still too raw. But about the future. About what he might do when he got out, 15 years from now if he got parole. About how he might help somehow, make amends. "The Dignity Foundation," he said slowly. "When I get out, could I volunteer there? Not for forgiveness, just because it's right." I thought about it, about how the women we helped might feel, knowing my son, the fraudster, was working there, about whether redemption was possible. "Maybe," I said finally. "We'll see." It wasn't much, but it was something. Today, 7 years after that Christmas Eve, the Dignity Foundation helps over 500 women a year. We have offices in 3 cities. We've recovered over $8 million in stolen assets for victims of financial abuse. David writes to me every week. We talk on the phone once a month. It's not the relationship we once had. It never will be. But it's honest. It's real. And slowly, painfully, it's healing. Last month I received a letter from one of the women we helped. Her name was Patricia, and her story was so similar to mine, it made my chest ache. Her son had stolen her retirement savings, used her name to commit fraud, left her with nothing. I wanted revenge, she wrote. I wanted him to suffer. But then I found the Dignity Foundation. You showed me that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. I'm rebuilding my life now, and someday, maybe I'll help other women rebuild theirs too. I cried when I read that letter. Not tears of sadness, but of purpose. Because she was right. The true revenge wasn't sending David to prison. That was just justice. The real revenge was proving that they couldn't destroy me, that I could take the worst betrayal of my life and transform it into hope for hundreds of other women. I think about that Christmas Eve sometimes. The cold porch, the closed door, the presents left behind like trash. I think about how much it hurt, how broken I felt, and then I think about Patricia, and Sarah, and Chen, and Rosa, and all the other women who found their way back to dignity because I chose to build instead of just destroy. My son took everything from me, and in doing so, he gave me the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that I was stronger than I ever imagined, that my worth wasn't determined by who valued me, but by what I chose to create. The Dignity Foundation isn't just my legacy. It's proof that the human spirit can survive anything. That love, real love, isn't about blindly supporting people who hurt you. It's about having boundaries. It's about justice. And sometimes it's about walking away. But it's also about something else. It's about the possibility, however slim, of redemption. Not forgetting, not excusing, but perhaps eventually understanding. David will be released when he's 58 years old. He'll be old like me. His children will be grown. His life will be unrecognizable. I don't know if I'll be there when he walks out of those prison gates. I don't know if we'll ever have a real relationship again. But I do know this. I survived. I rebuilt. I transformed pain into purpose. And that is the greatest victory of all. They released David 3 months ago. Parole after serving 11 years. Good behavior. Genuine remorse. The parole board called me as a character witness. I told them the truth, that he had destroyed me, but that he seemed genuinely changed. I didn't go to meet him the day he was released. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. But he knew where to find me. The Dignity Foundation now operated out of a beautiful renovated building downtown. We had 23 staff members, partnerships with law firms across the state, and last year we helped over 800 women. David walked into my office on a Tuesday morning. He looked small, nervous, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, carrying everything he owned in a single backpack. "Hi, Mom." "David," I gestured to a chair. "Sit." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside my office, I could hear the sounds of the foundation at work. Women talking to counselors, lawyers reviewing cases, someone laughing in the break room. "You built something incredible," he said, finally looking around. "I've read about it, but seeing it..." "It's not mine," I corrected. "It belongs to all of us. Every woman who walks through that door. Every volunteer who gives their time. I just started it. Because of what I did to you." "Yes." Another silence. Then David reached into his backpack and pulled out a folder. "I don't expect anything from you," he said. "I don't expect forgiveness or a relationship or even kindness. But I want to give you this." I opened the folder. Inside was a detailed business plan for a re-entry program, helping formerly incarcerated people rebuild their financial lives. Budget projections, partnership opportunities, grant possibilities. I wrote this in prison, he explained. I know about financial fraud now. I lived it. I know about prison. I know about losing everything, and I want to help people who've been where I've been, people trying to start over. I read through the pages. It was thorough, professional, well-researched. This is good work, David. I was thinking, not for the Dignity Foundation. That's yours, and it should stay focused on women. But maybe a separate organization, a partner program. I could run it. I'd work for free until it was sustainable. I'd do whatever it took. I studied my son, the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the humility in his voice. Why? I asked. Because you taught me something, Mom. You could have just destroyed me and walked away. You did destroy me, I deserved it. But then you took that pain and built something that helps people. You showed me that redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about doing the work, making things better, being useful. I'm not sure the world wants financial advice from someone who committed financial fraud. I know, but maybe they need it. Who better to teach about the warning signs of fraud than someone who committed it? Who better to help people rebuild from nothing than someone who had to do it himself? He had a point. I'll think about it, I said. Over the next few months, David volunteered at the foundation. Not with clients. That would have been inappropriate, but behind the scenes. Fixing computers, organizing files, making coffee, doing whatever needed doing. The staff knew who he was. I was honest about it from the beginning. Some were uncomfortable. One woman, Maria, whose husband had embezzled from his company, couldn't be in the same room with him. David understood. He worked different hours to avoid her. He never made excuses. And slowly, very slowly, he proved himself. 6 months after his release, we launched Second Chance Financial, a separate nonprofit focused on helping formerly incarcerated people. David ran it with the same humility he brought to everything now. He taught classes on financial literacy, using his own story as a cautionary tale. He helped people understand credit, banking, how to rebuild after hitting rock bottom. He was honest about his crimes, his time in prison, his loss. And people responded, because he wasn't preaching from a pedestal. He was speaking from the bottom of the pit, showing them the ladder he had climbed. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, David knocked on my office door. "Mom, can we talk?" We sat in my office, just like that first day. But this time, there was less tension, less pain. "I'll never be able to make up for what I did to you," he said. "But I want you to know that every person I help, every life that gets a little bit better because of this program, that's me trying. That's me saying I'm sorry in the only way that matters." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and for the first time in over a decade, I saw the boy I had raised. Not the man who had betrayed me, but the child who had once looked at me like I hung the moon. "You're doing good work," I said quietly, "because you showed me how." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then David said, "The kids want to see you. They're adults now. Jason's 24, Emily's 22. They've been asking about you." My grandchildren. I hadn't seen them since before the trial. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That I hurt you. That you did what you had to do. That you built something beautiful out of something terrible. Emily wants to volunteer at the foundation, actually. She's getting her social work degree." Tears filled my eyes. "I'd like that. And Mom, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but maybe we could have dinner sometime, all of us? Not to fix the past, just to start building something new." I thought about it, about the years of pain, about the closed door on Christmas Eve, about the betrayal and the revenge and the hollow victory. And then I thought about Patricia and Sarah and Chen and Rosa, about David teaching financial literacy to people society had written off, about Emily wanting to help other women the way I had learned to help, about how the cycle of pain could become a cycle of healing. "Yes," I said, "we can have dinner." David's face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in 15 years. "Thank you, Mom." "Don't thank me yet. This isn't forgiveness, David. I'm not sure I'll ever fully forgive what you did. But it's a beginning. A beginning is more than I deserve. Maybe, maybe not. But it was what I could give." That was 3 years ago. Today, the Dignity Foundation and Second Chance Financial work together, helping thousands of people rebuild their lives. We've expanded to 7 cities. We've influenced legislation on financial abuse. We've become a model for other organizations nationwide. David and I have dinner once a month with the grandchildren. It's not perfect. Sometimes old wounds still ache. Sometimes I look at him and remember everything he took from me. But I also see what he's become, what we've both become. Emily now runs our victim advocacy program. Jason volunteers teaching computer skills to women re-entering the workforce. They call me Grandma now, cautiously, as if testing whether the word still fits. It does. Last Christmas Eve, 15 years after that terrible night, I stood on a different porch. Not David's house, but Emily's new apartment. I held presents for her and her fiancé. My hands were steadier now. My heart was lighter. Emily opened the door with a huge smile. "Grandma, come in, come in. Dad's already here. I hope that's okay?" "It's okay," I said. And it was. We ate dinner together. We laughed. We shared stories. At one point, David caught my eye across the table and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded. Because this messy, complicated, hard-won peace, this was what real love looked like. Not the blind devotion I'd once given so freely, but something deeper, something earned. Before I left that night, Emily pulled me aside. "Grandma, I want you to know something. What you did, starting the foundation, helping all those women, you changed my life. You showed me what real strength looks like. You're my hero." I hugged her tight, this beautiful young woman who had grown up in the shadow of her father's crimes and my revenge, and somehow emerged kind and strong. "You're mine too," I whispered. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. Your engagement keeps this community alive, and there are so many more stories to share. Because here's what I learned through all of this. The greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. It's taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and using it to make the world better. My son tried to destroy me. Instead, he forced me to become someone stronger, someone more purposeful, someone who could help hundreds of other women find their way back to dignity. Was it worth it? The pain, the betrayal, the years of anger? I don't know. But I do know this. We can't choose what happens to us. We can only choose what we do with it. I chose to build. And in the end, that made all the difference. The door that closed on Christmas Eve 15 years ago? It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of the hardest, most painful, most transformative journey of my life. And I would do it all again. Because on the other side of that closed door, I found myself. Not the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing, but the woman who demanded respect, who fought for justice, and who learned that the truest form of love includes boundaries, consequences, and the courage to walk away when necessary. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and work very hard, the courage to walk back, not to where you were, but to somewhere entirely new. That's my story. That's my truth. And if you're facing your own closed door right now, I want you to know there is life on the other side. There is strength you haven't discovered yet. There is a purpose waiting to be born from your pain. Don't give up. Build something beautiful. And remember, the best revenge is becoming someone they could never break. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Subscribe, comment, and know that whatever door has closed in your life, you have the power to build your own way forward. This is Margaret Sullivan, and this is my story of how a closed door on Christmas Eve became the opening to everything that truly mattered.